Man has been described in his uniqueness by scientists, by anthropologists, as the naked ape, the animal which makes tools, the animal with language, with culture, with technology. But there is a recently developed characteristic of man which not only distinguishes him from the natural world, but which is now separating him from the natural world, and which even threatens to destroy it. And that is his fantastic and prodigious use of energy. Running up the hill behind me, I've probably consumed energy at the rate of about 400 watts. Allowing for some heat lost in my body, I had a useful output power of perhaps 100 watts. That's about one light bulb's worth. But a car coming up here is using energy at something like 100 times the rate. Something like 10 kilowatts. That's the same power output as an 80-ton blue whale. What there is here, a number of different objects, a number of different things that use energy somehow or another.
Oh my God.
There's an oak tree, a man on a bicycle,
Becca thinks trees don't use energy.
a fast train, a blue whale, a jet aeroplane, a crocodile swimming, a fast car, a charging elephant. Charging elephant? How are you getting on with the charging elephant? A light bulb, a large bird, a laptop, a hairdryer and a scooter. Okay? The game is, what I'd like you to do is to organise these things from the lowest user of energy to the biggest user of energy in the right order.
And then they do the death roll, so they're pretty quick. And then they're pretty quick.
I think this is charging. Yeah. Blue whale.
When it comes to sorting out the cards, people have a reasonable idea about what to do with something like a light bulb. But it's much more challenging for most people to think about the energy throughput, the energy consumption of objects like a blue whale or a swimming crocodile or an oak tree. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. C'est gentil. And things like a charging elephant. And in general, they greatly underestimate the amount of energy consumed by our technology, by things like cars, planes, scooters, and even a hairdryer. Even when swimming, a crocodile only uses a few watts, a few joules per second of power. The same is true for something like a bird. A light bulb at 100 watts is more than both of those, and is in fact about the same as a man on a bicycle. A charging elephant, which you would say was a rather splendid and majestic thing, only about the same as a hairdryer. A blue whale, about the same as a car. And way, way bigger than any of those is the aeroplane. The train that I'm in is being pulled by a locomotive with a power of about 5 megawatts. That's coming on for 100 times the power of a blue whale, 100,000 times the power of a human animal, and many thousands of times the power of, say, a charging elephant. I'm at Geneva Airport in Switzerland. Every 5 or 10 minutes, a plane takes off from here. These machines use fantastic amounts of energy. About 100 million joules every second. That's enough to feed an elephant for a day. It's 1,000 times the rate of consumption of a blue whale. If that much energy were turned into food, you could feed roughly 1 million people with it. It would be nice, wouldn't it, if these were blue whales, or any sort of whale. I can just imagine myself in some boat in the South Atlantic, like David Attenborough, watching whales basking in the sea and flapping their huge tails, like this thing's got a huge tail. They're very similar shape for much the same reasons. This is the River Rhone in Switzerland, heading down towards Lake Geneva, carrying glacial meltwater. And on this bridge over the river are the pipes from the oil refinery, the Tamoil oil refinery at Aigle, going over towards the distribution and storage area. Carried on this bridge. And here is the oil refinery itself, processing quantities of energy which are so large that they defy the imagination, they defy almost description. It's not a very big one. This refinery processes about 45,000 barrels per day of oil. That's a rate of processing of energy in the region of 10 billion watts. That would keep 1,000 jet aircraft continuously in the air. It's more than 1 million times the rate of energy consumption of a blue whale, 100 million times the rate of energy consumption of a person, of a man, of a human being. There are more than 60 refineries globally bigger than this one. In fact, more than 60 that are 4 times bigger than this one. And they produce an amount of energy which is so large it is 500 billion joules of energy per year. That's about 100 times more energy than is handled by, processed by, eaten by all the wild mammals in the world. Everything apart from man and the domesticated animals. Every rat, bat, antelope, elephant, rhinoceros, blue whale, all combined have a food energy requirement of about 1/100th of what man processes with these monstrous machines. The water here in the River Rhone in Switzerland used to be ice and snow in the mountains behind me. There's still some left over from last winter. It's now June. That represents a huge amount of heat energy being absorbed on the ground by the snow, by the ice above me here, and coming down in the river. The rate at which that energy is arriving is about 300 gigawatts, which makes man's activities look pretty puny. The total mass of all living things globally is about 600 billion tons, and about half of that is bacteria, single-celled organisms of different sorts. The plants, about half. The animals, only about 1% of the total, and we have the invertebrates, the vertebrates. I put in an estimate for the wild mammals. We don't really know these numbers terribly accurately, although we know a lot about ourselves, This is the population of man, about 6 billion human beings, with a total mass of about 300 million tons. In this column, I've put the energy usage in terawatts, that's millions of watts. No surprise that the plants are the big energy users. They capture all that sunlight energy, although a lot of it just goes into warming them up and meeting the energy needs of their internal processes. They're only about 1% efficient at storing food energy. And here we have the animals consuming about 2.5 terawatts of that energy at that rate. The invertebrates, the vertebrates, and the wild mammals. And then here we have man, whose total energy usage is about 16 terawatts. Of course, most of that is the technology. What I've done is worked out the energy density of these things by looking at the total energy consumption, or the power consumption of the different categories, and working out the amount of power required to sustain 1 kilogram. For the total biosphere, about 35 watts per kilogram. And if we do the calculation for all the other categories, this is what we get. Plants, obviously, the big users, but the animals, very sparse indeed per kilogram and in absolute terms. And here we have man at something over 50 watts per kilogram, compared with less than 1 watt per kilogram for the whole of the rest of the animal kingdom. Merci. A tree like this can easily have a leaf area of about 100 square meters. And landing on every square meter of that is sunlight energy, when the sun is shining, of about 1,000 watts, 1,000 joules per second. So a tree can easily be processing energy at the rate of about 100 kilowatts. That's quite impressive. That's 1,000 times more energy than I'm using,